Hello everyone, it's Saturday, September 5th, 2015, and it is 2:52 p.m. I actually have been away for a little while, as most of you probably know. Work just got too bad on the farm. Grass was growing too quick, and I didn't have any time to sit down and do any individual research on any of the topics that I wanted to research. So, video making had to go by the wayside for a couple weeks. That being said, I actually have been wanting to do a video on solutions to the main problem for quite some time. And for time's sake, I suggest that I just go ahead and get right to it. Now, as I'm sure we all know by now, the first step in solving any problem is first to identify the problem. Identify that there is one and what is causing that problem. So, in this case, it's my firm belief that the main problem on this earth has to be the corrupt, intrusive, and overreaching governments of our modern nations. And by that, I also mean the corporate interests and the people who own those corporations. In a nutshell, I'm really talking about the highly developed, advanced system of control that operates unbeknownst to those who actually carry out the functions necessary for this corrupt system's survival. It gets deeper than that too. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into identifying the problem. Hegelian dialectic is one of them. The problem, reaction, solution paradigm that they've got us in. You put Hegelian dialectic on top of brainwashing, and that equals easily controlled masses. And easily controlled masses basically equal an army of lemmings, basically to enforce almost any agenda, be it war, social, medical, rights-based, environmental, religious. These masses of unaware folks are divided by race, income, sexual preference, religion, region, age, etc. They don't know they're being divided by an intelligent, non-organic force, that is. So basically, in summary, I believe that the main problem is this intrusive, corrupt, overreaching government which uses Hegelian dialectic on the unaware masses who have already been brainwashed and preconditioned into being divided into these groups and subcultures to specifically respond to events. I'm basically talking about the media hoaxes and false flags that we're seeing in certain ways, in certain predictable ways, in which makes it easier for the powers to be to control. So that is our problem. This government system having this system of control in place and having the brainwashed public basically carry out their own will, with the public essentially being unknowing. So naturally, that brings us to the next step: find solutions. Now, the best solution I have is honestly just to stop playing their game. Why not? It's rigged anyway. Instead, peacefully remove your consent from the system. You can do this by being vocal yet respectful to your peers. This will be a new concept to almost everyone you meet, everyone you talk to. So I do suggest just to go easy. Always be willing to just agree to disagree with folks when you're trying to explain the concepts of a truther. The beliefs of a truther are somewhat hard to grasp for most of the sleeple. But that being said, if you're polite and respectful enough while using a decent enough vocabulary, you might just be shocked to find out how many people that are out there that are really looking for their way out of this, basically a slave system, if you will. They just don't know where to start. We need to start with those open-minded folks first, I think. It's my belief that the majority of the rest will follow in due time with, herd mentality and herd think once that they see they're not going to be the first zebra in the river. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what it's all about. No one wants to be the first person to be called crazy. The next suggestion I have is really self-sufficiency. And there's a lot of people out there that talk about this step. James Corbett and a bunch of other people have mentioned it in their videos. But I definitely want to spend a little bit of time talking about it, because by this I mean drive a car you can maintain yourself. For instance, I drive an 88 pickup truck. I got it for $1,900 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. I've put a little bit more into gas because it's not fuel efficient, but I've avoided a $400 car payment for 4 years now. My car insurance is $50 a month. Not only is it cheaper in the long run, I can do most of the maintenance work myself, and I don't know much about vehicles, but it's more, I can do more work with it. I can haul things with it. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit. But I think that's a very important part. Become self-sufficient, learn how to grow food, learn basic medicine, things of that nature. If you can get off the grid with your power supply, that'd be awesome. Solar, wind, any kind of alternative energy sources. Self-sufficiency is going to be a large part of the overall end game. All right, actually, I want to touch a little bit more on barter before I move on. For instance, if you learn how to barter, you can end up in basically both parties can benefit. I had a spot on my back that looked like it might be cancerous, and because I talked to my dermatologist, I was able to actually work out a deal in barter. I had a $1,500 operation that I ended up working off on his property, doing yard work for him. I did 40 hours of labor. We called it $15 an hour. So I got out of the deal what would have been a $1,500 surgery. I got done for $670. I only had to pay $70 for the biopsy, and I did 40 hours of labor on the farm that we called the fictional $15 an hour. So the way I looked at it is it would have taken me more than 40 hours to find $1,500 worth of labor. I would have had to gone out and do that labor and then paid him the money. Instead, I got the surgery that I needed for less than half price. I worked it off, and he got work done on his property that he would not have been able to do himself. So in that case, everybody won. And you can do this with chiropractors, with mechanics. You might not be good at physical labor, but you might be a great babysitter. You might not be a good babysitter, but you could be a great dog walker. I mean, there are many, many different ways to barter. And now that I've touched on that, go ahead and move on. Now, what I refer to as the Great Awakening is the event that Big New Brzezinski was talking about a few years back. And by the way, I don't for one second think that was some kind of slip or mistake that guy made. I think that he was throwing that out there in the public conscious that these people are waking up in order to wake more people up. They need more confused people running around. So they probably know that nothing's more confusing than waking up. You know what I mean? Anyway, side note. But anyway, the Great Awakening. I think personally that when enough people are aware of their own enslavement and peacefully remove their consent from this system, the authority, the powers that be, can no longer claim that they rule by consent. They're no longer there to govern people by consent. They are oppressors at that point. And I can't claim ownership of that idea. I actually got this idea from Kip's Clips. So thank you very much, Kip. I love the idea. It's brilliant. I think it's really honestly the only way to go. We can't just keep voting left, right, or center and expect some kind of change when it's just a puppet that they pull out of their closet. And this is where I put in my little disclaimer. Things will get hard, and I mean freaking tough. If we do ever get to the point where the Great Awakening hits that critical mass, where we get to that percentage of the population that we need participating in the boycotting of buying these corporate goods from the corporations that support the destruction of our own national sovereignty. These corporations aren't going to like that. They're going to make it hard. They're going to make it as hard as possible. They're going to turn off the EBT cards. The banks are going to close. There'll be bank runs. There's not going to be food delivered to the supermarket. Inflation is going to be crazy. Fuel will be scarce to non-existent. It's going to get hard. Alrighty? It's not going to be an easy thing at all. But, that being said, this is where self-sufficiency and barter come into play. This is why they're number 1 and 2 on my list, as a matter of fact. They're so important to our survival. If the government can't starve us into begging for their help, if they cannot force us into going to their hospitals for medical care, then they have little power over us. Very little power, in fact. We need to keep the economy going on our local levels whilst the politicians attempt to make things as bad as they possibly can for the public. We need to continue feeding our neighbors with our community gardens and our yard gardens that we plant. And by continue feeding our neighbors, I mean that this includes the local police force, all right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off about that. It's bullshit, man. Whatever. Listen, we need people out there enforcing basic laws, all right? We do need some people out there. So we need to keep the good cops, the firefighters, the hospital workers, and all their families in food. Keep their refrigerators full. Make sure that they get fuel so they can get to and from the station or the hospital, etc. Without the support of those vital services, our chances for any kind of peaceful transition plummet dramatically. Alright, this video is running a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and just wrap it up here. This was just an initial video. So, in short, I'll just say that, I'm no politician, but no politician should be a politician either. And by that, I mean, I suggest that my endgame, for the endgame, my suggestion in America that this is, Ireland and Spain and France, all you guys are going to have to work it out for yourself. But I, for one, believe that we need national sovereignty as a system of checks and balances. That way, when one nation does get out of control, the rest of the world can decide to get together and beat the shit out of that nation. It just needs to happen. Granted, I understand that system has been exploited for so long, but when you really start to go look into it, and you find out that all the nations are really working together and that America is just playing the role of the dick, it might change your point of view. But anyway, I digress. I suggest that we just revive the Constitution and enact strict term limits. I strongly believe we should overhaul the entire election process, making it completely transparent and entirely impossible for a, quote, career politician, end quote, to be elected to serve in any office, whether it be president, governor, congressman, judge. It doesn't matter. They should all be plucked from their normal jobs, whatever they do in real life. However well they do their regular job should reflect on how well they can perform when having to go to an office every day that they don't necessarily want to be at, And they should always have some kind of guarantee of employment afterwards, so they can at least maintain their same position or pay rate with the company that they're with or the job that they're doing. We're going to have to talk about this. This is not going to be an easy process. Like I said, I'm not a politician. I only look into the stuff as an amateur to see possibilities and solutions for the future, how to fix what I consider to be, the best system. I think capitalism, when it's not infringed upon by the government and with certain monopoly laws in place, so corporations can only get so big, I think the capitalist system is today probably still the best system, although it has nothing to do with freedom. I'd like to change that and make it a free society in which a man can make as much money as he's basically willing to make working, that kind of thing. So on that, I will end this rant and begin the open discussion. All I ask is that any and everybody with thoughts, comments, suggestions, ideas, links to other videos and concepts, just please add them below in the comment section, and we should be able to keep this conversation rolling and build upon it, mold and shape some better ideas out of this rough hump of clay I just tossed on the table. Alrighty guys, as always, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate any of you that have made it all the way through this long and boring video, so thank you guys very much. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe.